Good morning. Good morning, and we apologize for the delay. There's a lot of traffic and we are hoping someone does something about that. Welcome to the February 25th board meeting, and we'll go ahead and get started. Just make sure you read through the non-discrimination notice, our ethics reminder that it is the duty of every board member to avoid conflicts of interest. And if any board member has a known conflict of interest with respect to any matter coming before us, please identify the conflict and refrain from participation in that matter. Do a roll call. Start at 2.
Danny Nell, Town of Carborough.
University of Durham. Javier's here, yes.
Caballero is here as well. Karen Howard, Chatham County.
Doug Platinsky, Triangle West.
Here, by tag.
Michael Parker, Go Triangle alternate.
Kelly Green, Go Triangle.
Mark Bell, Pinnacles.
Amy Fowler, Orange County.
McCullough Town, Chapel Hill.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda? I know there was a correction prior to the publication of the plan.
I just want to say, Nitha Alam, I'm here for Durham County virtually.
As is Lisa Mathis, I'm homesick today.
Good morning, Marilyn Carter, Orange County.
Thank you all. Is anyone signed up for public comment, or is there anyone from the public here? Is there a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda? All right. Motion was by Mark Bell and the second was Carl Rist. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to our action items. The first is item number 5, fiscal year 2024-2033 Transportation Improvement Plan Program updates, and Bill Myers. Say that wrong.
Everyone. So I'm here to speak about our TIP movement number 6. So right now the action is to release public comment. And so just to highlight a couple of global projects on here. We are adding more funding to the RT project. Also utilizing some old funds from previous years for both Orange County and Durham, just utilize them before they lapse. And there's also a couple projects to be removed, but otherwise, that's it for this movement. Just release public comment if anyone has any questions.
Questions, comments, board?
One question. So a lot of this is sort of like you're kind of moving money, projects may be delayed or whatever. Most of what it says, right? And I'm just,
Yes.
I know that a lot of the frustration our residents have is like projects get pushed back. So I noticed one here on the list was the Hilldale Road pedestrian improvements. It's been like on the books for probably like 10 years. And so it's kind of moved back from 24 to 25. So like for all these, what's going on there? And how do we communicate this to our residents that it's a delay? There's so many of these here. Like
There are, and with each project, it has its own kind of unique story, as well as various factors. And kind of conveying those onto the tip, we definitely kind of add more context information regarding the projects, regulatory information, that's just kind of giving sense of kind of its history. That's for the specifics for that project. I'll just double check with Cedar Durham just on this factors.
is that the city side or is that on the sort of like the TPO side? Like who makes those calls?
To delay?
I can speak on that one. This specific project, the plans, like NCDOT updated their standards in 2024. The plans needed to be updated to the latest NCDOT standards for this particular project. That's why that one had a delay in it. At least the most recent delay.
And again, that's on the city side. It's not on the TPO side, right?
Working to get it updated and ready to go as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Can you tell me about, a lot of this I don't really understand because I don't recognize the projects need, but one of them says PG 5255 changing responsible agency from Go Triangle to Go to that.
So just the project sponsor that's listed in this dip was previously Go Triangle. Just do some cleanup projects they requested. It be switched over to Go Durham just because yeah,
I'm just guessing, what is the project?
to establish the transit centers in Durham. I'll just double check whether that one's the Village or South Point Transit Center, but
Okay, maybe it's in the detail. I'm looking at the summary sheet.
so the summary sheet just kind of was on that first line is also what description that was kind of on that summary sheet. And so for the details, I just need to reach out to Go Durham for those details.
Yeah, like, I think in that situation, discussion between Go Triangle and the City of Durham agency of BD. The two transit centers in Durham.
Big transit center.
Change here is more of an administrative change, not anything regarding to the scope of the project.
Wondering about the statewide changes. Are those changes in rules and laws that have taken state and we're reflecting them in our own work?
And I was wondering about the removal of the Roxborough Park and Ride. People could speak up. I have trouble hearing everybody, and Philmon, you speak very softly. So if everyone could speak up. What is the reason for the removal of that project?
The exact reason I'll to reach out for more additional context, but this is one of the projects that has been around for quite some time. And so I'll have to call upon Go Triangle, but just some spring cleaning of older projects. That's how that removed. That reason I'll have to double check with the agency.
And so the action here is just to sort of put this out for public comment, right?
Yes.
Because I will say, Doug, like there's I know this is not our decision now, this is just for public comment, but to the extent that we're trying to make a decision on this stuff, there's not a whole lot of background here to know what's actually happening, so.
Yeah, I mean, we rely on the sponsor to furnish that information. We aggregate it up, but we can certainly try to fill in some of those blanks. But we really need it to be, in the sponsor's wording. We can't assume why or the how behind everything. So we can
So we may
go
need-
through the list
yeah.
if we.
Yeah.
When it comes to a vote, yeah, we need to.
Yeah, I mean, maybe something like an accompanying document that just gives the explanation. Kind of like, I'll give an example. We get a quarterly budget report that is just a chart from our staff, but then there are little asterisks that give an explanation for what you're seeing or what's happening. So something that if somebody wants to understand, they can go look at the other document as a reference, something like that.
I mean, for example, the Hillendale Road sidewalks, the explanation could be additional time needed at this % design because we're updating to current NCDOT standards.
I also found out that it's partially the railroad too, that we're waiting on.
So in coordination with railroad. So definitely work on doing that and try to include that as we release.
And just a quick, so is it that are they just providing the information that we ask for? Like, we can do, okay.
Information we asked for are only the ones needed to kind of just update this dip. So a kind of summarized description on information.
Um,
Here, I'm sorry, I apologize. I am still trying to. One of them says, in addition, Orange County bicycle route, Cleveland Drive to Willow Drive in Chapel Hill, update on road path and construction sections. And the suggestion is to delay construction from fiscal 23 to 25. So if we have public comment, does that mean the public can say, no, don't delay it? But what are they?
Yeah.
I mean,
We're required to have a public comment opportunity. So we often get comments that aren't even related to the projects when we do it.
no, but what if you got a comment or a dozen or 100 that said, don't delay this project? What would happen?
You would inform me that we received those comments.
But
And
there it is, but it is too late.
We would consider.
Well, I mean, I think it would be the same as if we had public comment at our board meetings, commissioners, right? There are some things that the public will comment on that we don't really have the option of taking into account, right? Like if the delay is because DOT has said that they need something and we can't get that something until, I don't think that the intent, the hope of not delaying is something that we can rest our hats and say, okay, really, it's going to depend on what the public comment is
But
and how
ultimately,
useful it is.
they're not our project. We don't execute any of these projects. We are just basically compiling requests from the various jurisdictions to actually do the project. So for that one, that is, something that Chapel Hill has obviously decided to do or not do.
And I would say if we're asked to interpret those comments or synthesize them, I would say if the public does not want the project delayed, that, the information is valuable from the respective jurisdiction and okay, there's a lot of interest in this and we need resources on getting it done. We need to follow up. I mean, I would imagine the question from Hillendale is, Eric has heard that and the council folk from Durham have heard that and back and do that the same way, these projects. I think the good thing about all of these projects that we have and public is supportive of. There is an urgency, maybe now more than ever, to try to advance them and get them implemented.
I guess the question comes down to whether the delays are avoidable or whether they are just to overcome.
Right, and could you, by shifting priorities, sort of move something faster? It's possible, right? Maybe, maybe not, but at least that's what having those comments would be helpful to understand.
So this is just our prioritization, right? It doesn't mean they already have funding.
This was committed funding.
They already have, so ones that were fiscal year 23 already had funding in. And so if we're asking to shift it to 25, does that mean that funding from 23 follows to 25, or did they already use that funding for something else?
No, it's following.
All right, yeah, let's take for example. Does the request to delay come from Chapel Hill or does it come from DOT?
Either one, both NCDOT and our member jurisdictions submit a request through STIP, whether it's from an item N, which usually DOT is initiated, or from us with just this regular amendment here. So this depends on the project, but it could be either or.
Okay, let's move on and I recommend that the MPO release the tip for public comment.
First, second.
Second.
Okay.
Motion by Fowler, support by Lindell.
Now
Was
I
Danny motion?
did move it. Happy to yield my
And
movement.
Melissa's second. It is confusing, you're right. Okay, moving on to item 5A. All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is Philmont as well. It's the FF 25 anticipated application activity spreadsheet.
This is a notice that this TPO received pretty recently. It did catch us off guard. It is a requirement from the FTA for us to kind of just list out the projects that we intend to use funding for FY25, including projects or for funding that could be lapsing for past years, just because the funding received does have a time limit for how soon we need to use them. And so just with the timing that we received this and with the deadline that T has given us to submit this sheet, we are asking the TPO board to provide, to allow us to kind of bypass TIP public engagement requirements that would require a public comment period, just to be able to ensure that we are able to program projects and meet the deadlines.
I just have a question. I'm assuming this is in response to some federal, maybe things that are happening at the federal level, and I'm wondering, what is our general strategy around trying to obligate funds or, you know, put ourselves in a better position around contracts and projects and making sure that we don't lose funding for things?
So with highway funds that flow through federal highways, North Carolina routinely spends, they're aggregated at the state level and then distributed. And North Carolina spends all of that obligation authority every year. So if we have obligation authority on past projects, money that follows, the state maintains basically a ledger of those commitments to us at the state level, but all of the federal funding is obligated and spent. So it's transferred. With FTA, it doesn't quite work the same way. The point of obligation or transfer from the federal government to the state government happens when it's entered into and the grant agreement is signed off on.
At the local level, or at the regional level.
By each project sponsor. So yes, at the local level. So the FTA has identified that there are funding awards that are not under project agreement, and they want, if the local sponsors, we assume they all do want to spend that money, that they want to obligate it, that they get their ducks in a row and get everything submitted by first acknowledging that there's an outstanding grant agreement by, I think it's March 4th. And then that there is a grant agreement in place by April 1st. Is that correct, Philmon?
So April 1st for the deadline and then grant agreement later on, I guess.
So that is in reaction to, okay, since it's not like, it's not the same as NCDOT obligating all of its federal highways funds, this is how we're kind of reconciling and making sure we're caught up on spending with the FTA programs. And typically this doesn't happen at this point in the year. It has happened in the past. I think we had something last fall that was a little similar, trying to catch up old grants that needed to be put under grant agreement or risk lapsing. And they've asked us to go back through, and this was sent out to everyone across the country. Like, okay, if you're going to spend this money, get it under grant agreement now, and you have a tight window to do it. I don't anticipate that this will be the last kind of emergency or tight timeline that we have, and we're trying to react so that we can support our local partners getting the projects under agreement.
So this seems really important. How are we going to do this? Like this is going to require all of the, members of the MPO and their staff to move quickly to get these contracts done or obligate these funds. Like, how is this going to work?
Well, once it's under the grant agreement and the federal system, it's in essence obligated. So so it kind of shifts out of the clawback opportunity from the federal government. But yes, absolutely. Once it's in there, we should be trying to spend the money.
As quickly as possible.
Yes, and not just to risk losing it, but so our constituents can receive the benefits of the improvements that the funding is going towards. So Philmon's working through, we have a list, and we're contacting our local sponsors. They're aware of opportunities and I think updating information and trying to keep everything in a cycle that's presentable to this board and useful for the local agencies is going to become really critical. So we're continuously trying to work on and improve that.
Is there a role for us to play, like following up with our staff? Or is there, is there a way that we should be helping on this?
Just conveying the importance of getting projects moving. We've got, as I mentioned, we've got a sort of a ledger of commitments from NCDOT that is dozens of projects long. It's hard, it's difficult. All of these projects have complications with them, whether they're public transportation projects, or whether they're highway projects or sidewalk projects. Building projects like Durham Station, they take a lot of effort. So just reminding that there's an urgency and supporting.
Can we get a list of all of these projects?
It's not here, yeah.
And that way we can each respectively help follow up.
Certainly.
Yeah, for each of our jurisdictions.
Yes, yes.
That's my question is how many, what's the number we're talking about? How many projects? Like, is this like,
So it's not so much by projects, but rather the funding amount and the number of projects to use that funding kind of depends on the sponsor. For how
are these like 12 in the TPO or are they like 100? Like what numbers are we talking?
that, I don't have those numbers handy, but within our trams system, that's kind of what we look towards past projects of what currently obligated to kind of calculate that funding amount.
It's fewer than 100.
Okay,
Yeah.
but it's not like,
Maybe
it's not,
a dozen, I would think.
it's what?
Maybe a dozen.
At
It
most,
depends.
if even that, because we're just doing for fiscal year 25 and additionally any lapse funding. And so we've already had conversations regarding the lapse funding, just due to being on top of that and catching those. Two of those are actually on our number 6 for TIP. And so it is helpful that it is limited to just the transit funding, 5307, 5339. And so those are what we'll be looking for. It's not necessarily the standard usual funding that we're used to, like STPGDA, CMAC and such.
But to your point, getting that list would be really, by jurisdiction would be really, really helpful.
We can get that back out after this meeting.
Okay, so the action for this board is to authorize staff to amend the tip bypassing public comment periods if the executive director determines that such amendment is necessary to comply with updated USDOT and FDA guidance. And the following circumstances are met: one, funding is verified as a result of federal and/or state programmatic formula project grants or discretionary grant awards, and two, the project sponsor requests the amendment prior to June 30, 2025. Is there a motion from this board?
Second.
Sally and Carl. All in favor? Aye. Carries.
We also have a comment from Bergen on the last item, the tip amendment. She wanted to let you guys know that the town of Chapel Hill had to delay the Fordham sidewalk path construction because in 2023, the bids came in too high and we did not have enough funding. So we delayed construction while they sought additional funding. They have that funding now and will rebid the project this spring/summer.
That's helpful. I would just ask that when this goes to public comment, explanations like that be out there so that people can say, why did you do that?
And one thing I'd also like to add on that last note, came up in discussion. We also want to make sure that if there are federal funding grants or commitments, that they are woven into the Orange and Durham County Transit Plan process, and make sure that working the project agreements include federal funding when it will be spent, so that we get an accurate picture of not just the federal funding that's going into this work, but also the county transit plan funding resources that are committed to improving public transportation across the region.
Next is agenda item 6, spot local inputs, points, methodology release, public comment. Come on, you're still on the hot seat, right?
All right, so right now we are just talking about the methodology for. So it's no longer local input points, it's now the methodology for identifying projects, and I'll get into that split later on in the presentation. But first is we're starting with a recap from spot 7. Just we did receive a large amount of projects, about 3 or 4 highway and bike ped categories. We received 50 submissions for new projects. Transit category received 25, 18. So we narrowed these just through our preliminary analysis years ago to 24 submissions for each mode and presented it to the public. And then that was during the summer. Later on in the fall, that's when we kind of went through the process of updating a local input methodology, just due to the fact that it happened after public selection. It seemed kind of backwards. And so I thought to kind of bring it to the forefront to get ahead of it when we are notifying the public. And then we'll get just the results from P7, as we all saw, just with the funding availability, it led to very few projects being funded in this area. And so as far as we know, the funding availability situation is in a similar state. While we don't have the specifics or the details yet for any changes in a similar state. And so moving on to the change, so decided to separate out the methodology for selecting projects versus the methodology for assigning the local input points and ranking the submissions that we have. So the second part that I separate out will take place in the fall after we have selected our projects. And another change just with the current methodology that we're looking at, just scheduling updates, mainly to spot schedule, but also just with our meeting change schedule for adding May as a vacation month. And so this document currently, it kind of presents our ATP goals to the public. It says just the guidelines for how we chose these projects and how members select projects we've chosen. And then also the schedules for public engagement throughout this. So the actual changes for P8, we have not this other than just the schedule. So those changes are to be determined, but just with our experience from last cycle, we do have to just to proceed forward.
What's the picture there? That's Travolta? What is this?
It's in Vega and Pulp Fiction.
Oh, Pulp Fiction. Okay, yeah.
That didn't come from, yeah.
More of those types of things. As much humor as you can put in these things right now would be really.
So this is all we kind of received at the moment, just the schedule, and it mirrors last year's schedule, albeit the delays the last year's had. And so this is some of the stuff that we would have had not being delays. And so I see here, we are right around here where the group is still kind of finalizing details for any kind of changes we'd like to make. And then summer is when Spot Online goes live, and when you can start testing things around on the online system and begin submitting projects. And then the second half of the methodology will be over here once we get into the actual assignment. Does anyone have any questions on the calendar schedule before I move forward?
I just wanted to make one observation about spot 8 funding. I was able to meet with Secretary Hopkins last week, and the department is very appreciative of the legislature for enhancing funding and diverting sales tax to transportation funding in the state. The additional $700 or so million has not resulted in extensive new projects. It is merely at this point just covering the overruns from already committed construction projects. And obviously situations like Western North Carolina Helene recovery are additional blows to the statewide program. So I think your intuition that you presented is going to be fairly correct. Spot A will not have extensive opportunities to include new project funding. And
Think of the context.
Can somebody share what the spot 8 kind of percentages around where the money is coming from?
we can follow up on that. I don't
Okay.
think the state board has adopted their
So it's all
finance-
state money.
state and federal.
It is federal too.
Yeah.
But is this highway dollars or is this yeah, it would be really helpful if included in these kinds of things from now on in general, like literally a pie chart of this is what the state dollars are and this is what the federal dollars are so that we understand what the risk is moving.
Surely. So I'll explain this a little bit, but we're doing this a bit ahead of schedule, just to prepare for our preliminary analysis. But the official data on P8 has not been released yet. This schedule is all we have.
Okay, so you all don't even know the percentages of money.
Right.
Got it. Thank you.
But we could probably go back and show how P7 shook out and send that to you for context.
It may not be applicable, but at least it gives us a sense of what I think everyone needs to, moving forward, every step should be what is the risk with federal commitments? And also what is the risk with state dollars if they decide to mirror what's happening at the federal level, just to be cute.
So another, that we took on here earlier, this is only about a month earlier than we should have just 2 years ago, but we are starting our initial request for new projects only. Just because with projects that previously competed, they go either into the holding tank or carryover, and those lists are provided to us by the spot office. And so right now we are just kind of looking at new submissions just to prepare for a possible landslide like we had last cycle for the large number of submissions. And so here are just kind of some guidelines that I sent out to our TC as they are selecting new projects. And so there's no, of course, limit that we impose on them. They can submit. This is a state process. And so just reiterating that highway projects must comply with our MTP. That is a guideline that we at this TPO set, not necessarily the spot office, just to ensure that our projects are following the goals set out by MTP. And just note just that because not all projects are explicitly stated in MTP, just as type projects and operational system projects. For cases that they're not explicitly stated, we'll just review them on a case-by-case basis, but as long as they align with the goals, they're generally good. And then recycling BTs by March, just to be able to kind of ramp up the initial analysis, preliminary analysis, sorry. So March.
Assuming there is actually some money in spot 8, when would that money actually be available? When would the money actually start rolling out?
So assuming a project goes through PA and is awarded funding.
Yeah, when's the spot 8, I know, there's 5 and 5, but when's the earliest money when does it take effect in terms of actually spending money? For what fiscal year?
It depends on the project because projects are being programmed as early as 25, even as late to 37. And so for projects that are scheduled for 25, it would kind of.
We can't do 25 if spot 8 doesn't make decisions till 26 or 27.
It would be 27 to 37.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the new step, my apologies. With the new step, it would be the kind of beginning of that cycle.
Thank you.
These are just some upcoming key dates. March 7th is when we're kind of seeking feedback from my TC, just to update this methodology to come back to them and for you guys in April for approval. And then as they are submitting projects, it will be brought back to you guys in June in order to be released for public comment. And it'll kind of go out public comment over the summer, and August is when we will be able to submit it, because that's gonna start spot online should, the deadline is P8 to be able to submit online. So at this point, any other questions?
More questions or comments on the board?
Question. Maybe are the new BRT routes reflected in this?
So the ones that were just awarded with P7, so this document is just to highlight our upcoming project selection. It doesn't have information on past projects or contribution. So like we're asking for where to find information on those new submissions. So right now, I guess the only place that they would be released to the public is just with the draft STIP that is currently NCDOT has put out to the public. That is kind of the first place where information will be, but just a disclaimer, we are currently doing some project development for some of those, just to kind of just improve those projects, and also just with the finding words here for this. So what I'm trying to say is what is on there isn't always the final answer or the final description. These are still being workshopped just because when they're submitted, we didn't know what we'd receive funding for. And so some projects are more developed than others. And so the latest information is on the draft STIP as a public comment. Past that, you just need to speak to either public sponsors or us to find updated information.
And yeah, go ahead.
So like, I'll give an example. There was a $40 million award proposed in the draft STIP for a Durham, for preliminary engineering for a Carrboro to Durham BRT route. That's going to be multiple segments of public transportation. So our next step is to try to segment that into deliverable components. And, you know, for example, the city is also looking at the Duke VA campus to downtown as, you know, part of its first corridor that it's would like to advance. So a portion of that $40 million award under STI, to me, it seems intuitive that we would segment the medical campus to downtown as part of that, and sort of assign a proportionality of the level of effort of that $40 million to go towards preliminary engineering when the city is ready to advance to that step. Kind of the same for the west side, where, you know, at some point, if we have a BRT line that goes from Carrboro to Durham, it will likely intersect with Chapel Hill's north-south BRT project. So is there a co-alignment or stations where they intersect or run together that some of the funding award through Spot 7 can support north-south BRT development? And then what would be the next segment that Chapel Hill will look at as expanding its high capacity transit network? We're under study with Chapel Hill right now to move forward to answer that question. So that's the kind of project development we'll be going through, and ultimately those awards, you know, the RTP to Johnston County and then Durham to North Hills will go through the same kind of segmenting project process where we'll try to disproportionately assign the funds to the correct segments and when we expect to deliver them.
And that's all part of Spot 8?
No, this has already been awarded.
Spot 7.
Spot 7, or it's proposed with the adoption of Spot 7.
Right, no funding yet, but.
Well, it's preliminary engineering awards, so it's not set in a year in the draft STIP. It's just in a kind of a program account, a bucket. So it's when it makes sense to move that forward. It's reserved, but it's not going into construction or a defined phase yet. So it's still a little squishy, and we're working to get through that so that maybe by the time we have the draft STIP for 27 to 37, we'll know more about when the dates could be delivered and we can program the funding strategically.
Does getting money like that create any kind of formal or informal obligation to pay for construction? I mean, you know, the foolish thing would be to spend $40 million on the document and say, yeah, but we haven't got the money to build it.
That's why we need to segment it strategically and properly so that we're not spending that money until it's likely that there is a deliverable project. Because yes, particularly if it's federal funding, there will be an expectation that there's a follow through on paying for it and delivering it through construction.
That's how it works, Michael. You know that. You have to do the design before you can. I mean, you have to, that's the way it works. You know that.
Well, but it didn't used to work that way. And you can create an obligation that means when and if 40 million is well spent, you have a call on the additional funds. It doesn't give it to you right up front. But obligating or spending $40 million with no assurance whatsoever of getting construction money, is not really a wise investment, as we found out with the light rail.
Yeah, this is Brian Klutchar from Division 8.
Yeah.
If a project has preliminary engineering funding only in the draft STIP, that means it gets rescored in P8.
So you could lose the money.
Yes.
Yeah. Why we need to keep developing it and showing that it's a good and implementable project. Thank you for that clarification, Brian.
I just want to celebrate the fact that we even are, got the funding for doing this and moving forward with several BRT projects. I think that's great. And my other question was, how will it work with, obviously with BRT between Durham and Carrboro, we're here together in this MPO, but or TPO, but what about, how do we do Durham to North Hills? That means working with Campo on that. So how does that work?
The same way. We're going to sit down and understand where the logical segments are based on what it seems like projects could be delivered, which is intimidating given the state of project delivery right now across the country and the triangle. And try to advance reasonable improvements.
Okay. That also means people collaborating around who gets to put points on which part of a project.
Yes, and we have established a good working relationship. Okay. And I'd like to point out, not just with Campo, we're also going to be working with Burlington Graham MPO, particularly in Spot 8. We've identified a potential connection to Burlington and Mebane that seems to have good numbers so far in our preliminary modeling. So lots of cooperation, lots of forging relationships.
Thank you.
So the action for the board is to release the draft methodology for public comment. That was Javiera and, okay, it's Amy. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item number 7, public participation plan released for public comment, and Mike is presenting.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Monet Moore. I am with the Triangle West Transportation Planning Organization, and this morning I am here to present to you our drafted public participation plan. This is a plan that will replace what you currently know as the PIP, or the Public Involvement Policy. And so we're going to walk through some slides. We're going to go through some of the content that we have here. That'll include a background, the goals and objectives, and then also the key changes between the PIP and the public participation plan. So a little bit of background on the public involvement plan or policy that we currently have adopted. So that plan includes the PIP identified planning activities that require public involvement, guidelines for determining the level of public involvement needed for various planning activities, minimum and advance notification guidelines for various planning activities, the length of public involvement periods, communication and engagement methods that the MPO can use to solicit feedback during all stages of the plan, program, and project development, how the MPO will respond to public comments, and then major decision points for plans and studies that require public involvement. So as we took a look at our public involvement plan and policies, we kind of started looking at how can we identify goals of what we wanted the next iteration for that to be for our public participation plan. And as a part of that, we identified 10 key goals. And those include to include everyone, to focus on equity, to start early and stay engaged, share clear information, listen and respond, use various tools, make it visual so people can understand it a little bit easier, ensure accessibility, collaborate with agencies, and then review and improve. So some of the key changes that you'll note from our PIP to our public participation plan, if you've taken a look at the draft that's in your agenda package, the use and commitment to using plain language. So the document that you received looks a lot different from what we typically produce as technical staff. It is using plain language. We're using lists, and this is based upon the guidelines from the Department of Interior. Additionally, we identify and categorize our key stakeholders. This is something that we picked up in partnership with NCDOT, making sure that we have a list of key stakeholders that we can engage with, that we're building rapport with, and strengthening those relationships within our communities. Additionally, we're prioritizing meaningful engagement. So in our previous PIP, we listed things like how many followers do we have on our social media? And we kind of want to switch and take another route for that. Not only are we interested in those metrics, but we're also interested in what we deem to be meaningful. So how are we engaging our communities? What are we hearing from them? And then also how we're incorporating that into our plans and our programs. Some other key changes details how members of the public can participate, how they can contact us, how they can reach out to us. We also simplified our public comments period is what we're recommending. Our current public comment period requires 15 days for some things, 30 days for others, 42 for another. And so what we would like to do and what we're proposing would be kind of consolidated in a way that makes it easier for people to understand what the expectation is when they're engaging and interacting with us. Lastly, we also included a social media policy. I'm sure everyone has seen that we've been using our social media a little bit more, especially as a part of our rebranding. And so as we're on those platforms, we want to make sure that everyone knows what those standards are, that they can contact us, they can follow along, and we're going to engage on those platforms in respectful manners. And then lastly, we also included an emergency policy. So we recognize that things are constantly changing in this space, that we may have to deviate from our intentions or our initial intentions in order to meet critical deadlines. And so we wanted some flexibility there. So this is the schedule that was anticipated for this. We previously took this presentation to our technical committee on the 11th of this month. As a part of that, we heard some initial feedback from our technical committee relating to the document. One of those feedback items was to clearly define what we mean by meaningful engagement. We're presenting it to you here today. We're also proposing that the public comment period be open for this up until April 11th, and then we will take it back to the technical committee on April 8th, and then following that meeting, it will come back before this body here as our TPO board. And so today's request is that we're able to release this public participation plan for public comments. It's still in the draft phase. The document that you have that draft watermark on it. It also has an explanation of the document within the draft phase. And so we would like to release it for public comment so we can continue to edit it and then hopefully get you all a version that you all are proud to adopt. And so with that being said, I'll take any questions that you all have.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes.
Yeah, could you talk a little bit about if and how you sort of, for want of a better term, close the loop with the public? I know, when I was on council, one of the frustrations was public would comment, they would give suggestions, but they wouldn't get any feedback. They wouldn't know if the public comment was used, if it wasn't taken into account, why wasn't it? And, that tends to cause a great deal of frustration in the community. We used to hear all the time, I come to these meetings, I give public comment, I don't know what happens to it, I'm done. So could you talk a little bit about how you make it into a full circle rather than sort of a one-way communication?
Yes, absolutely. So behind the scenes, we've kind of been working on this for several months now. We hired someone to kind of help us with our communications. And as a part of that, we've drafted language in regards to how we should be responding to public comment, whether it's being received via email, whether it's being received via social media. So we're still kind of working through that with staff in regards to training. In addition to that, we have started exploring opportunities to increase our public outreach and engagement and consolidate those so we have a streamlined system in the way that we're receiving them. So we continue to improve those processes internally. But I think the most important thing that you'll see in this document is that, and we piloted this with the MTP when we were going through our goals and objectives, is that we provided this board with a report that says, hey, these are all of the comments that we received across our MTP areas, and that's for both Campo and for our side of the Triangle West, and said, hey, these are what we received. This is also what we received from our most disadvantaged constituents. And then this is how we would like to incorporate and change our goals and objectives. And so that reporting piece is kind of really important because it allows us to say, hey, we heard you, but this is also how we're implementing what we heard from you.
So, but how explicitly? So that's great that, we get it. We have an opportunity to react. But then how is that transmitted back to the folks who made the comments?
Yes, and so a part of that, we're responding to our public comments. So for instance, if you submit a public comment, we're able to respond directly back to that person, letting them know that their comment was received, providing them any additional information that they requested, and then formally building those public comments into our planning processes where possible.
Right, but you still haven't answered my question. So you get a public comment, the board either does or doesn't do something with it. How do we let the people who submitted comments know what was done, if anything, with their comments and the reason why?
So I think our process is outlined to where we receive a public comment as staff. Staff will respond to public comment. Staff will then do the work.
But when let's dive a little deeper. When you say the staff will respond to public comment, is that merely acknowledging that we got it? Is that saying you asked the question, here's the answer to your question? Or is it the board read that the board, you asked that we not build this project, the board considered your comment, they're building the project anyway, and here's why?
Yes. So that's kind of what the whole process looks like. So for instance, being that we deal with such long projects, we will acknowledge, we will respond and answer any questions. Say, for instance, if we're working on our CTP and we get feedback saying that we don't want this built here, we can then say, okay, this is the comments that we received for this particular project in our CTP, that they don't want sidewalks in the neighborhood. We can then build that into our projects and report back to you all saying, hey, this is what we heard. Then follow up, whether it be adopted or not adopted, saying this was the outcome of the public comment that we received.
And if I could just add something to it, Monet and I have been interviewing various firms that have public engagement tools that we could use on our website or online engagement tools. So one of the things that is best practice now is to kind of create a database for each project of who we're hearing from, what their contact information is, and so then we can follow back up with them once the project is completed, share the adopted plan, and that's something we have not had traditionally at this NPO. And so we're hoping to build that out as a result of, adopting this plan and then getting going with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. That was helpful. And I do feel like I heard the answer well. Both of you, thank you. Yes, Carl.
So one question, thanks, Monet. So in your slides, you talked about the changes from the previous plan, which is like 2021 or whatever. Is that like significant changes or just sort of some technical wording changes?
It's more so wording changes because we did put it into plain language. However, the key changes are what we kind of highlighted. So there are elements a lot of the elements we did keep from the PIP. However, we put them in plain language. We consolidated that table, but there are going to be some similarities, but the key changes I highlighted here today.
But when this gets released for public comment, will there be like sort of a red line version that shows the changes from the last one? Because I know,
Did not do it in legislative format or strike through another line.
would that be helpful for people to be able to review how this has changed from the last document?
I would say no, because they're written in two different styles. One is more technical, one is more plain language. And for folks who aren't used to reading legislative format, because again, the target audience for this document is members of the public. So I didn't want to put it in legislative format and then them having to kind of understand and follow along with those track changes.
I think when we release for comment, we can include a link to the old.
Yes.
Say if you're interested, if you're interested in comparing, this is the change in feel and style. That may be helpful.
Because it may be too complicated to like look at a whole bunch of track changes. So yeah, if that's a better way, then yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah, there would be a lot of track changes.
I would say I'm hoping, I mean, thank you. To me, this looks great. But I'm hoping that the outcome is significantly different because Karen, you remember when I were on that panel, back in Durham last fall, where we were talking about it, and questions from the audience were, well, when are you going to listen to us? What opportunities are there for us to have into what you do? And so I'm hoping that public comment, I'll certainly add to the racial and ethnic minorities section and other sections. I think, I guess the proof is going to be in the pudding. But I think the opportunity to do a lot better job of getting public comment.
This change gives us better space to listen and understand and learn ourselves as we evolve the process. So, I'd like to point out this transformation is not like, oh, well, we found this and this is how it's going to be forever. This is elevating to the next step. We're going to continue to learn and dynamically improve public participation.
I love that you're having a public comment period on a public participation plan. And
which rules do they follow?
And I presume that you're sending them out via all these various methods that you're outlining within this plan. So it'll get those people, but how do we know we're getting the people, that are not on that? For example, I have a son with disabilities, and I noticed for people with disabilities, you're including the Durham Mayor's Committee for Persons with Disabilities, which sounds like a really small group. It feels like you should include some other, like a few more groups of folks with disabilities, like folks that have jobs and need to get places.
That's a great point. I think we can make sure that we follow up and identify some of those representatives. This disability needs community, and make sure that we get the changes in front of them.
Places of work in Durham. Use transportation. Reality ministries, a variety of, because I think this limited group are people that probably already have access that you've mentioned here about user needs.
In general, it seems Durham centric.
I mean, I don't think this is I would imagine this is an iterative list.
Exhaustive list. It is simply a starting.
I mean, the whole example of some of those groups that exist here in our area, and it's also an example of some of the folks that we've been building relationships with.
I mean, usually when you do targeted like this, you meet people, you learn people, and then they kind of point you to other folks. But a lot of times, unless there's a relationship built already with an established organization, another organization isn't gonna necessarily deal with you because there's no trust there. So I think that that's, I mean, the whole point of doing engagement like that is that you slowly build trust and then you build out your list and it takes time.
We
So I would
certainly,
assume that that's the strategy, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yes, that is the strategy in regards to getting engaged early and staying engaged. We're really focusing on building rapport with some of our community.
if you have suggestions of where to look and who to connect with, we would appreciate it.
And with the youth, I don't know what Boost is, and I would think including schools might be a good way.
There's a separate category that lists schools. Yes, yes. Two things. Whenever we're doing surveys or anything like that, we have learned in Durham, if you really want folks who are not white and not affluent, you gotta do paper. You gotta go places where you can do paper. Like we've seen like demographic differences for everything we've ever done around engagement for 5 years now. And then my second suggestion is talk to the folks at the city of Durham and the participatory budgeting side. That's the program that we run that lets voters vote for projects. Because they have lots of different relationships for Chapel Hill and Carrboro. You all need to talk to those folks, but in Durham, they have lots of relationships with lots of different communities, specifically some Durham Housing Authority communities. And we know that those folks actually ride transit, to Amy's point, and are often, you know, most PHA residents in Durham are around annual income of $14,000. So we know that they're on our buses and know that the city has, and PB in particular, has built a good relationship. Carmen Ortiz is the person I reached out to in the city of Durham. Thank you.
Sorry. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you. I think that was fantastic. I really like the focus on plain language. And I think I could see it really reflected in the towards the end of the report when you explain what the MTP is, all the different types of plans that we do, because that is super confusing. The way it's written is really understandable. I benefited from it, so thank you. Two questions. One is I'm wondering in the first section where it's mentioned some of the federal policies and executive orders, how we are going to deal with that, because I think the Justice 40 was removed. Was that already ended by, no,
Not yet.
not yet.
Not yet.
So
Not
that
yet.
was rescinded. And so to answer that question, we have been tracking the executive orders and we've
Yeah.
been cross-checking them with what we rely on in our legal framework. So at the beginning, you should see under that explaining this draft document is where I've been kind of tracking in that draft document of executive orders that may impact the public participation plan. But as of now, the guidance that we've received from our partners so far from the federal government is that we are to continue forward until we receive formal guidance, and we have yet to receive formal guidance, so we did not change this plan.
Good, great.
It's fine. I'm screaming.
And then related to the chart that says, you know, stakeholders, type of stakeholders, examples of stakeholder types. So I understand this is not supposed to be exhaustive. I just wanted to suggest that under schools, that we include also high schools. Because it says elementary and middle, but I think we should include high schools as well. And then I also suggest including government boards and commissions. For example, you know, we have Durham Open Space and Trails Commission. We have BPAC, but Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee. They actually are really good about promoting whenever the MPO is putting out a plan or something. They will push those out. So I would suggest adding that. Another category, I'm not sure, where would we include something like RTA? Do you think?
after?
We can include them with our, more like our business group where we have our Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, so business groups. And then I'm wondering whether it would make sense to also have a category for like nonprofits. I don't know, or if that's something like Bike Durham would be. I know, I see it's under cyclists and pedestrians, but I'm just wondering whether that's another, just thinking about categories of stakeholders.
Advocacy groups are always good to amplify.
Yeah.
Like Durham is particularly skillful.
Right. And yeah, and also like in Durham, we have the Coalition for Affordable Housing and Transit, which is a community group. So again, I'm just trying to think about the categories. So community advocacy groups, whether, I don't know if that's a different type or what, but.
And can I ask you and this goes for everyone, if there are folks in your community, organizations in your communities that you think we should be connecting with, or would like us to connect with, please send them to us. Again, this isn't an all-inclusive list, but we really are just trying to be very diligent about making sure that not only we connect with community, but we're viewed as a part of community.
I did think about our re-entry councils, local re-entry councils, because transportation is such an essential part of our conversations. But I agree, we should all take it upon ourselves to be thinking local and who would be good partners. Next plan.
Thank you so much. Great work.
So the action for, to go ahead and release the plan. A public comment period. Amy, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Agenda item number 8, destination 2055, deficiency and needs and Yanking. Item.
Morning, everyone. So my presentation is first step of doing and taking care of the result for the 2055 MTP. Is deficiency and needs analysis. This slide shows a general process and steps for analysis for MTP. So starting from general one from goals and objectives is already passed on. And secondly, is finish the analysis for the deficiency analysis and improvement. Currently, we are working on alternative analysis. It's from February to March. Hopefully, we can get result and present to the board in April. After this alternative analysis, we will have preferred options. Preferred options will based on the alternative analysis, based on ongoing project from agencies, based on the public common feedback. After preferred, it will go to the final one. The MTP final version generally it's very close to the preferred scenario. So the purpose for the presentation is for this analysis is to ensure staff, publics, PC member and board member familiar with efficiency and measures and receive the feedback. So what is a deficiency and needs analysis? Generally, we have forecasting of the population and employment by area. this population, the transportation demand from this population and jobs onto a transportation network. What transportation network is? It's existing past committed transportation network. When we say committed is generally a funded project. And also for transportation service, it's very short range. For example, we take a look of the transit agency short range transit plan. So we only look the funded project from transit agency until 2028. So we are relatively conservative for this committed project and service. That's 2055 population demand onto the existing past committed transportation network. It's a starting point for the MTP. It's just want to say the population grows this amount to 2055, while our funding we are not going after this funded project. If there's no funding, assume what happens on this extreme case. It's not real case, it's extreme case. We will see the gaps between the needs and supply. That's efficiency and need analysis. The result and the map and document, we will refer back during the whole process. It shows in the previous slide, when we get into alternative analysis, when we get into the preferred options, we will always look back to compare it to this needs and efficiency analysis result. So this slide shows forecasting of jobs and population. The first table shows the forecast job number by county, by whole counties. You can see the fast growth is Chatham County, followed by Durham. So the overall growth of job for 3 counties as a whole is 85%. Second table shows household population forecast. Still Chatham County on the top on the fast growth, followed by Durham. And the 3 counties as a whole, the growth is 47% from 2020 to 2055. That's forecasting. You can see the job growth outpaces the population growth. It's not normal in area, but for all area, it's job oriented area. It could be like this, but that's current forecasting. So this map shows job density by area. So you get a total number of jobs divided by area, square miles, you get density of the jobs. So the darker of the color means high density is. And from this map, for example, you can see from north of the Durham, the medical center area is relatively high density of job in the future. And downtown Durham, Duke University, and following through this 15501 corridor all the way to the Champ Hill and UNC. They're relatively high density of the job. And this map shows population density, where people lives in the 2055. There is online map for both population and job. If you want to look detail or look exactly what number is in your area, you can click the link and look the map in details for your area. So the density is still around Durham downtown, Duke, and UNC Champ Hill area. You can see the densities of population.
So, Yanping, I'm just interested in why, if Chatham has such significant growth, why are we not showing it on? map.
Yeah, that's, if you click the online map, you can get, I'm sorry, this slide has a limit size. If you click the map, all the Chatham County part.
So I did, but I'm just thinking, just in terms of the volume of growth, like Chatham's is so disproportionate to not be able to see it on this map seems like.
Yeah, that's very good. For example, for the public involvement, Monet prepare a very beautiful ArcGIS online maps. So it shows whole area. You can zoom in, you zoom out, and from beginning, you can show the whole area. I'm sorry for this presentation. It's very limited. So this slide talk about performance measures. We have system level measure, vehicle mile traveled, VHT, vehicle hour traveled, VHT, passenger mile traveled, transit passenger mile traveled, PMT, and mode share at system level. That's only a couple example. We have detailed measures, but these are case. Secondly, we have a corridor level measure. Remember, we had done this congestion management. We have about 22 corridors in the TPO area. So we have corridor level measures. For example, average volume over VC over the capacity ratio. We have a travel time index. I will get that into detail in the following slide. And for the lower level measure, for the network segment, roadway segments, or transit service segments, we have also volume over capacity ratio, or we have a passenger over seat capacity ratio. So that's a measure, performance measure. Detailed mall system measure, just mentioned earlier, we show the limited area for the measure in this presentation. It's just a key one. There are many measures in the attached appendix together delivered with meeting material. So this is what we talk about: vehicle mile traveled and vehicle hours traveled, together with passenger mile traveled. This passenger mile is a new one we added. Previous MTP we haven't got this one, but this time we get it in. Measure the transit travel mile growth.
Maybe you're gonna get to it, but you know, like when I look at this slide, everything is about vehicles.
Yes.
And I see nothing about people, except for the passenger miles, which are just having to do with transit. Do you have any performance measures that talk about how many people are getting from where they were to where they need to be? Because it seems to me that if we focus on vehicle miles traveled, all of those, you know, everything so far that we're seeing is about vehicles. The way you saw, you know, that leads you to do things with roads to make more, faster, better, whatever. Are we able to sort of look at people and how many people are moving and how easy or difficult is it for people to access the things they need to get to, whether it's mostly jobs, but other things? Because I think I don't want to speak for anybody but myself, but certainly my preference is for us to be focused on moving people and being creative in how we do that, rather than defaulting to just figuring out how to move cars better. I mean, clearly there are places where transit or bike ped may not be an option, and clearly, you know, we're not making cars go away. But, you know, many parts of this TPO are fairly dense at this point. And so, you know, we need to be thinking, I think, more creatively about how we define the problem, so that, because how you define the problem is going to define or drive how you come up with solutions.
That's good comments. So what we try to do is based on the current trend, and then forecast into the future. If follow this trend into the future, we identify the issue or problem. and how to solve the problem. We could use different alternatives or solutions. At that time, the multimodal or activity transportation could be kicking in for one of the solution or combinations of this as a solutions to the issue and problem before it has.
Right, but if you define the problem as cars are moving too slowly, that drive, no pun intended, drives you in a certain direction. Where if you define the problem as people can't get where they need to get to in a reasonable amount of time, that may or should foster a different way of looking at solutions.
We can, for example, this model currently handle transit and vehicle travel. Vehicle travel, there are two types of travel. One is single driver mode. The other is high occupancy, means at least one passenger in the car. So these two types of driving and transit. And we are talking about and discussion and try to collect the data for bike and ped right now. So this presentation has less measures for the bike and ped, but we are working on that right now. So we haven't got this ready. We know, we listen to you, we know your comments from meeting in last November. So we are trying to collecting the data from all the members. We haven't got it yet, but likely in April we will get all the data. And at that time, we may have some measures for the bike and ped.
And the other point, which I've said before, and I'm sorry to bore people with it, but if you're looking to get people to use things that are different from cars, right? Congestion can be your friend. Because there are, the two best ways to get people out of cars when there are options available to them. One is have gas be really expensive, and two is to have driving be really unpleasant. And those are the best ways to get people to use other means. If driving is really easy and everybody could just zip along the roads, you create almost no impetus for people to use transit.
Is not only education of people communities. Yeah, definitely get more choice for the travelers. Give them more information about multimodal. Secondly, the cost is the key. If you look at Europe,
yeah, gas is much
the driving cost is higher.
Yeah.
And the transportation, public transportation is convenient, right? So that from both sides. Yeah, here the cost of driving is still low, but as the trend is up. That's kind of uncertainty of the planning. If the cost is high, yeah, good and bad. Maybe some people saying good, some people saying bad. Definitely, it will lead people leaving the driving mode to the transit with better and better transportation service from transit. Maybe we can talk more about at the end of this meeting.
Okay. We can take it offline if you like.
I appreciate all the measures that you have because we still want to know, can we get VMT down? But I appreciate you're adding bike and ped. And my question is, could you also add bus and passenger hours traveled? Because if we can show that passenger hours improve, that might also lead folks towards that method.
You can add that. The only things the number less reliable than this miles in the model. It's a mathematical tool. It's focused to forecasting the volume. How time a later, but still we can provide something like that.
And I'm pleased to see that you've got some per capita numbers in there. I think it's really important to link the VMT per capita as you get the bike ped data in here, because it'd be good to be able to show those to meet mode shift.
Okay. can try that.
So, but again, just to confirm, so Yangping, so you do have access to like bike ped data that you can put in this model?
We have some bike and ped data. We have bike ped data. So the bike ped data in this model is not as detailed level as transit and car. We generate for an area, for example, census block group, census tract. We know how many trips for bike and ped there. We know actually where these trips goes, but we don't know which route or multi-use path or trail they will use. We don't have information from so that's a limitation for the analysis.
And on that note, we've continuously heard understanding our non-motorized network and those opportunities, and we understand the lift of acquiring that data and trying to maintain it at some sort of level. Where we are working on some future opportunities. There's things with machine learning and artificial intelligence, process imagery. We constantly investigate big data sources that show street light, that show non-motorized travel to try to calibrate the model. So we are working on it.
I appreciate that. That's really good.
The data is very difficult.
I guess not yet, but I get there's a plan to try to get better data on that.
Is there a way to, and this is just an assumption here, places where they've increased their trail network and seeing, like using other people's data essentially. So it's your guesstimate of sorts, but like this community put this much mile of trail down and they've seen this much growth, and we can make the same assumption here. If we put this level, we all have lots of trail projects in our plans. And so if we can at least show, like, if you build it, then it gets used, because I understand it's hard to track individual walkers and bikers, and probably should be hard. That could be a way to at least make the case that we know that in this community, when they made these kinds of investments, it increased their numbers. And so we can make a similar assumption in our model. I don't know.
Look at Paris.
Well, yeah, I know, but in the US, I mean, Barcelona too, right?
Yeah. Amsterdam.
That's a great idea.
I mean, and we have some work. David on our team has updated the power supplies at some automated trail counters we have. You know, if a lot of communities use the National Count Day, where they get volunteers to go out and you can't do it everywhere, but you can get enough really tactical data collection points to calibrate the whole model and prove it's reasonable.
So the VMT, VHT, and the PMT increased dramatically, driven by the 47% population increase. The PMT, bus PMT increased most 43, so the bus demand is more than the other 87% increase. So on the other side, VHT growth outpaced VMT. So the average mile traveled with longer time. That means there are more contest situations.
Yangping, does this data sort of show the point that Michael has brought up, that when you have increased congestion, the mode does shift?
Yeah.
And it forms passenger miles traveled, and that's why we're seeing that shift.
You see the transit mode, the next table will show for this one. So this is a mode share table. Just mentioned this one. You can see because this is a congest scenario, we assume after this near future funded project, we will have no project all the way to 2055. And that leads to a congest situation. And there is a shift of the mode. Single drive SOV is down about 1%. 1%. And the high occupancy, still driving mode is down less than %. Transit is up more, from 2.8 to 3.2 relatively. Bike and ped from 9.6 up to 11.2. It's because congested situations. So that's a mode share table compared with 2020 and 2055. They forecasting the base scenario. It's congested scenario.
And just to comment on that. So that's great, but if by 2055, we only have a slight increase in transit, like that's not success. So I know this is all existing and committed. So clearly it shows we got to do more to get more people using different modes of transportation.
Well, I mean, slight is, I think, looking at, the 0.4% change in mode share, but we're nearly doubling the daily trips on transit. I mean, so yeah,
It's still a small share compared to the BMTs.
Small.
I mean, it is, but but it's still a significant growth in the utilization.
Can I ask a question? Like, is this saying that everything that there's a plan for? I'm trying to understand what is the assumption made in the model. Is this saying everything that there is either plans for, or is it dollars allocated? Like, what does this assume?
Existing and committed.
Simply is to say, assume the transportation investment stop at 2028.
Okay, so
After
this is not
2028,
thinking,
there's no project, no
okay,
plan project, no investment for transportation at all.
okay.
So what it will be is extreme case, makeup case.
This is just a status quo.
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah.
Baseline.
Okay,
Refroze it.
Good question.
Business as usual being build more highways.
no, not even, right? Because it's funding in 2028. That's what I'm trying to understand.
No,
Yeah.
just like literally froze it on 2020. Whatever was there is there.
But including the stuff we're doing, I mean, like,
Whatever's there and whatever's being constructed. Yes, whatever's
Not
there
anything
and what's
that's
being
planned
constructed.
for.
Anything beyond
That's
5
next.
years is what's going to be next, what you'll see in your.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure that like what we are interpreting, and I mean, this is a thing that, yeah, I'm assuming like this has to get shared out to the public, right? So folks have to understand that. So it needs to, like, to y'all's point around plain language.
And we have something
that,
for
and I
that.
know y'all are gonna update it, but we like assume that we're that, right? We are your guinea pigs in this room. Assume that for the most part, because folks who are providing public comment on transit plans are not, right? Like there are folks who are a little bit more tuned into what's happening for the most part, unless you're doing kind of real broad, right? But if you're putting this out and somebody's doing public comment on that, they're already probably transit advocate, right? Because that's who's paying attention to this. So their knowledge base is probably similar to our knowledge base. And so designing it that way when you're doing presentations, this is like adult learning, is really important. So assume that we are your guinea pigs as you share information.
Yeah, I did see Melissa first.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so right along those lines, I think it'd be helpful when you talk about those, what existing and committed projects were included in the model.
We have a map.
It would be helpful to say how many miles of highway, how many miles of transit, how many miles of bike ped, so that people understand what the makeup is that's being.
We will have the land mile for highway, by facility type freeway. And we will have the committed project location on the map. And for transit, we have a total service mile, daily service mile. We will have each transit line on the maps.
Okay.
So,
Oh, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I was wondering, can you use this data in sort of in a sort of a different way? Sometimes you can show people how, let's say, bad an idea is by showing them what the logical outcome would be, right? So let's say can you use this to say, okay, in order to, keep the level of congestion no worse than it is today, right? You would have to build X many miles of roads, which would cause, $80 skajillion, which is clearly impossible there's not enough room to build the roads, there's not enough money to pay for them, to really drive people towards recognizing that we have to do things in a different way, rather than making it look like it's possible to solve the problem using our traditional means. So, the data you're developing ought to be able to give at a very high level, like I said, to keep things no worse than they are today. This is how many, miles of road you'd actually have to build, and this is what it would cost, and then let people, sort of draw the conclusion, well, God, we can't do that.
It's in the next presentation, somehow touch your question, but it's fully discussion in the next presentation. So this is 2055. With forecasting, we use a short-range plan from Blue Triangle, Gold Dome, and then we look the Orange County transit plan. We look at 2028 at the stop plan. All the funded project was coded. For the Orange County, Hillsborough area, county transit agencies short-range plan as well. This is top 10 ridership transit lines. Number one is Champion North-South bus line. Second one is the Blue Valley Dorm transit line. Blue Triangle Valley Dorm. Third one is Gold Dorm. 8 to 10 is a connect bus line in the model. The third, followed by the 400. Blue Triangle 400. That's top 10 from the forecasting in this existing past committed scenario. Now we go down a level from system-wide level to the corridor level. Remember, we had this congestion management analysis. We had this corridor, and this is the top 10 corridor by volume over roadway capacity. We call it VC ratio. It's equal to total daily volume divided by roadway capacity. So for each segment, we get this number. For the corridor, we use an average value of the segment to get the value for this table. This is top 10 ranking corridors for the congestion level. So this value can be used to measure the congestion level. So the top one is Dorm US 70 East for 2055. This is daily VC ratio based on the daily VC ratio. The second one is I-85 South in Orange County. Third one is the I-40 East from the county line, Orange county line all the way to the Durham county line. That's it.
Is this in 2055 or what year is it?
2055.
So basically 70 would be at capacity.
Yeah.
At 2050.
That's an average at peak. I mean, this is average daily. I would imagine at peak, it's ridiculous.
Okay, that's a good point.
It's jammed out.
So this is average daily data. Next
Hi,
one.
folks. Excuse me. This is Camille Berry, Town of Chapel Hill. I'm trying to be mindful with as I call in, of being quiet. Those of you in the room, please be mindful that you're on a hot mic and we can hear you making comments or following along. And it does interrupt, it interferes with our being able to hear the presentation.
Thank you for the reminder.
Second corridor measure, this relates to the peak period. The travel time index. So the staff did some transformation of this TTR measure to extra time you need. So already the travel time index is the average peak time travel time from beginning to the end of the corridor divided by the free fall travel time. It just means not congestion travel time. then use the TTR -1 is extra travel time for the traveler needs. So for example, if you use US 70 East in Durham County, in the past, you need 15 minutes to go from beginning to the end. Then you need 20% extra time. This is 80% extra time. Then you need 15 multiply 0.8. That's extra time you need for travel. That's a measure for congestion. Information from the peak period. This table shows top 10 list by the extra travel time needed. Percent of extra time needed. So number one still US 70 East Durham County. And the second one is I-85 South, same as the VC ratio measure. The third one still I-40 East, 57% extra time needed. Generally, it's another measures for the congestions. After the corridor level, we
I
go.
just have a question.
Okay.
So looking at the last two slides around the corridor performance, how will this information also be used to help us determine where we need to prioritize, for instance, transit investments? Because even looking at this one, you can see the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 corridors there are all considered to be going to have moderate to severe congestion. So how will, just wondering how we're going to use this.
Very good questions. First, we will look whether there's issues. This top list table help us to identify potential issue location or problematic locations. From the location, we then look into the detail of the data to see where there's need for other mode. Definitely from the goal and objective, we put active transportation and transit and multi-user high occupancy car as a priority to promote. But we have to look whether it really address the issues or not. But detailed next slide we will see. Next following slide we will see. Further way to identify whether we can use transit as a tool or not. So this maps still shows vehicle daily volume over capacity. This time it's down to the roadway segment. So the red one means the VC ratio bigger than 1. That means daily volume over roadway capacity. The yellow one shows 0.91, means the volume is about in a range from 0.9 capacity to 1 capacity for the whole day. So the rest is under 0.9. In other words, the red one definitely we have to look into it, and the yellow one we should pay attention, and the rest we pay less attention. Yeah. So that's maps. So you can see from US 70 East, most are red and then yellow, red, and the last segment is not red, yellow. So that shows detected locations where that may have a problem. So this one is the transit one. We measure it down to the segment, measure the seat, passenger per seat. So we have a triggers, 1.5 is 1. That means if you reach the 1.5, means every 2 seats, you have one passenger stand there and 2 people in seat. That's a one measure. If you use 1 as a measure, 1 means everyone is sit there, the seat is full, So we use these two triggers. If it's over 1.5, definitely we have to take a look whether we can increase service frequency or we add a new bus lines or BRTs or other transit mode. So in generally, you can see there's a bar around the segments. The thicker or the wider of the segment means high passenger volume there. The narrow one means a relatively lower passenger volume. Thin bars there means lower volumes. Yellow, red means whether it's congested in car or not. So back to the previous Wendy's questions. So from here, we can see, for example, the red place we need increased transit service, whether we're adding BRT, parallels or on this road, that's needed treatments. Also, it's a congestion, if congested areas, then we add more bus service from there. That's when we yellow, we should also pay attention to for this yellow regions with this maps. That's for transit. So we have two maps, one for car, the other for the passenger for the transit. This is a last slide. It measures the people by use of the car in the morning peak period, travel from home to Durham downtown. How much time needed? The largest contours means if you live in this large contour means you need about less than 30 minutes to go to Durham downtown driving a car. The middle one means 20. You have 20 and drive to Durham downtown. The inner one is 10 minutes contour or travel time range. So back to the next position, the question previously. So we can generate similar maps for the transit to see all this scenario, getting people from live to where you work by key destination. For example, Durham downtown, UNC Champ Hill, Hillsborough, or RTP. You can do this kind of travel time journey by not only for this car travel time, but also for the transit. So that's last slide.
Thank you. Were there other questions or comments from this board? So the action for today is to release the 2020-2055 needs analysis for a 30-day public period.
Second.
That was, I think, Melissa and Amy. Okay, Amy and Carl. And Yanping, you have our next item, which is the destination. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm gonna forget. All in favor, aye? Aye. Thank you, motion carries. Our next is an informational item, Destination 2055 Alternatives Analysis and Scenarios.
I would like to ask Manette to give an overview of MTP steps.
Thank you, everyone. You all have just heard quite a bit about what we're doing in our deficiency and needs analysis. However, Yao Ping is going to also kind of start giving a little bit of information on what our next phase looks like, which is our alternative analysis. And so you all have seen this before. This is our plan development process. We're still in that analysis and evaluation phase. Once we're able to kind of wrap up that analysis and evaluation phase, these alternatives analysis will inform what we refer to as the preferred option. And so that's what will be coming next, hopefully launching between the months of April and August. And then once that preferred option is decided upon, we'll be able to kind of draft this final plan. And so just to recap, here are some of the key dates that we've been having as it relates to the MTP. So previous board meetings, also the joint board meeting that you all were able to participate in. And then again, taking things back to our technical committee to revise things before they come to you all as a board. And then we'll be sending out some additional communication and emails relating to the MTP. That will also include a story map that kind of goes over everything that was in the previous presentation, and then also what you'll see here in this presentation. And so with that being said, I am going to turn this over back to Yao Ping, and we're going to talk through the alternatives analysis leading off with our schedule.
Thank you. So this slide just tell us where we are for this presentation. We are at alternatives and evaluation, or we call it an alternative analysis. So its time frame is from February to April. So the purpose of presentation is to get staffs, public's TC board member to familiar with land use and transportation possibilities or alternatives for transportation. So the presentation will focus on the assumptions of each alternatives and project of alternatives and scenarios and related scenarios. So that's for alternative scenario. We will have 3 scenarios to address different alternatives in land use section, in the transportation section. We will have 3 scenarios. So the preferred scenario likely will mixture with assumptions and projects in these 3 alternatives. It's also possible from outside. For example, City of Durham is working on a Durham Freeway project. Likely we will get their input, the project input, get into the final preferred scenario. And if there are valuable public comment, get back, we may incorporate into a preferred option as well. So this slide is, if you attend January John MPO board meeting, Matt is already present there. It's a similar one, just giving you different alternatives of land use and different alternatives for the transportation. So for the land use part, you have existing condition, and you have a first one is a community plan. So in other words, the CPRC staff get all the current land use plan from all the jurisdictions and put them together and get a community plan scenario for land use. And following by an alternative place scenario. That scenario is will have a relatively more dense develop around some key locations. So increase density of land use at around key locations and get a different to the community plans to see what happens in the future. For transportation, we have existing as committed train scenario. And by train, we will have mobility corridor scenarios, which has different assumptions we will touch in the next slide. After mobility scenario, we will have mobility alternatives. We will have complete communities. Complete community scenario assume a more transportation investment, and with focus on the transportation, on the public transportation part and alternative transportation. So from land use and transportation alternatives, we form a scenario for analysis in MTP. First one is deficiency sorry, that is already done. That's not in alternative, it's already done. The first one reform is. And the rest three is in alternative analysis. First, and plans and trend. Plans means land use follows the jurisdiction. Land use plan. Trends means the transportation investment follows the current patterns and constraints. That's a trend. So plans for land use. Trend is for the transportation. Shared leadership scenario. We'll use similar land use assumption. For transportation means switch. There are more investment goes to transit part. So altogether, we'll have more funding availabilities. Transportation and transit. So first scenario of the three plans and trend. So as I mentioned, plan means for the land use part, trend is for the transportation investment. So the budget assumptions is we still follow the STR before it was mandated. In other words, we will follow the STR previous MTR before it was amended for the next 30 years. Yeah.
What does STI stand for?
STR means State Transportation Investment Law, I think. Strategic Transportation Investment Law. STR. It's state law. It's define how to invest transportation. So we will follow that for the next 30 years for this test scenario, this makeup scenario. So based on that STR rules, the most investment goes to highway. So again, this is a makeup assumption test scenario. We want to see how it looks like compared with other scenario. So just like existing past committees, it's makeup, it's assumption. It helps us to understand need assessment, and this one will help us to understand, follow that rules and restrictions, what will happen for that. For the land use, as I mentioned, is a local land use plan. For the transit in this train scenario, transportation part is train. We will have an intercity rail into this scenario. So currently, the intercity service from Raleigh to Charlotte each day 3 or 4 times for each direction. So we will get this one into these train scenarios. We will add additional station for RTP. Currently, only have a dorm downtown stations. BRT lines, we will add a Champion North-South BRT line into this train scenario. For bus line, we will generally base what we found in the existing past committed scenario, plus the funded county transit plan. We have one county, we have Orange County transit plan. There are funded projects there. We will follow that plan, add it in. So first is short-range plan. Secondly is a county transit plan. And thirdly, we may have some adjustment for service frequency, not much. That's for the transit. For highway, we get more projects there on the list. For example, for US 70, we already see that congestion there is top ranking for all the corridor. We will have a 6-lane expressway or freeway there. So to test how it looks like, it may solve the issue, it may not solve the issue, or it may generate the issue for other areas. So we want to take a look, understand the traffic system-wide and how people travel. Secondly, we have a 6-lane I-85 source. It's in the 2050 MTP second project. Third is I-86 6-lane interstate. 85, sorry, that's a typo there, I'm sorry, typo. I-85 north is not east of Durham. 6-line interstate also is not, it's just a test project. 15501, we will have Durham section upgrade to expressway and the Champ Hill section modernization as 2050 MTP. So all these highway projects are there. Again, it's a example for analysis, it's a scenario for analysis. Second is a shared leadership scenario.
I just have a question about that. So under highway, it seems like some of the things that you have listed here are not in our current MTP.
Yeah.
So I don't understand that.
Yeah, we try to test a two-board. This is the first scenario. It has relatively more highway. Then we can see how it looks like. This is the first scenario. The last scenario will have more transit. So we will see how that works and then compare all these three alternatives together to understand the system and then figure out final preferred scenario. Again, this is only make up based on the budget assumptions. It's not real. So it's based on the budget assumptions, SPR. So this is assumptions for this.
I guess that's confusing to me because what I see included here are things that we've already said that we don't want to do, or we don't want to do it that way. For instance, looking at like 15501 and 70 East, you know, we're already moving on a pathway where we aren't going to create a freeway there, or we don't want to. I guess, okay, all right. I'm just
testing. We're
okay.
seeing where things go.
Okay.
This sounds a little bit like what Michael was talking about.
Yes.
Are you trying to figure out the bounds of if you do mostly highway, if you do mostly transit? We're trying to find the extremes on either end.
It's not saying it will into the preferred scenario. Just test about all the travel change.
And hopefully we
VMT
can
change,
show some of
VST
that
change. Yeah.
data that Michael was talking about.
Okay.
So if you look, for example, you look the mode share of different scenario, you will see the result which is you prefer. So that's a test bound scenario.
Yes, so.
There are things on this chart right here that this board has already said we don't. Why are they in the chart?
Presumably, this is a good test for us. Like if I think about NC 54 modernization, everybody, I think, is clear on, I would like to not pursue that. You know, the reasons we would like not to pursue it are in part that the volume doesn't support the need of the investment. Running that model ought to confirm that assumption. If it doesn't, then I think the way that we would want to respond to the model would be re-examining our priors with connectivity around, you know, other modes to support.
And to your point, I think what I'm understanding is this also allows us to then have conversations with our partners and stakeholders and say, this investment is not going, if we follow this, it's not going to achieve
our goals.
It's not going to really adjust the congestion, you know, things like that.
So if you have a relatively good scenario strong, you want it is good or you prefer, and you need a reference, right? You need a reference to say which is what you prefer. Why you prefer? Because this reference. So these three scenarios will be referenced to each other. You figure out which is you prefer, the direction you want to go towards the preferred scenario. It's not the project we want to get into the. So shared leadership, the investment part has a change. So after the 10 years, we allow more investment goes to transportation, public transportation, and active transportation part, like pad part. This is a change, but the total budget still follows the 2050 budget plans. So the first share leadership, the second share leadership, and the first plan and twin scenario, generally it's still with budget constraints. We try to keep it as a budget constraint based on the previous information. And the land use data is the same, forecasting is the same as plan and twin scenario. Transit part for the intercity rail, we will get more stations there. We will get.
Let's do a quick question. Can you go back a slide, please? So for the locally adopted community land use plans, do most of the jurisdictions around here have plans that run through 2055? It seems like we're making assumptions about what those land use plans are in 2055, but they don't, for the most part, they don't actually exist. So how are you adjusting for that?
Generally, for the plan, there is a use of type, and the density of type of the use for that area. And then the CPRC has a land use model, right? So we have the county total population. We have county total jobs. So the total population is from state demographic. And the jobs we use from a third party consultant forecasting. And then there's a growth of this population and job based on the current plan type of use and the density of the use, how high you want to use it for density and related information and transportation accessibility. And then they allocate this growth of the population and growth of job to each piece of land. That's
right. So what I'm trying to get at is that it's certainly plausible that in 10 years or 15 years, many municipalities may change their land use plans, hopefully to allow for more density. And so that's not going to be captured here.
Number one
scenario.
Okay, but it's captured elsewhere. Okay, fine.
Number one, we have this one scenario. We will have a density development scenario.
That's right, I forgot that. Okay, my apologies. Thank
and
you.
Secondly, this plan is a 4-year routine. So when some jurisdiction has an update of land use plan in the next MTP, it will take into account.
Right.
So for the intercity rail, for this scenario, we still have the Durham station, RTP station, but we will add Hillsborough station. And also we will add Melbourne station outside our area because the model covers Melbourne area. That's impact to the Orange County fast growth area in Melbourne. So we will add Melbourne station as well. It's not mentioned in this slide. So for the BRT lines, we have 4 BRT lines in the previous MTP. Because the budget, we will take 3 of the BRT lines from previous MTP. Number one, we still keep the Champion North-South BRT. Secondly, we have a Durham Orange BRT lines. We will keep it here. The third one is from Durham downtown, Durham downtown to the RTP. Giving the award, the Spot 7 project, we can add that from downtown to RTP. Best scenario. 3 BRT lines, intercities rail with more stations. Bus line, definitely we will make some adjustment because we have the BRT. Some bus line may not be necessary, and we may need some feeder bus to the BRT lines. So we will do some adjustment accordingly. That's for transit. For highway, generally we will use 2050 MTP project list. And we will get the 2024 congestion management suggest project in. Generally, is a safety improvement and RTS. We will get it in. And last, additionally, we will have a test project is Durham Freeway. We will have HOV line, high occupancy vehicle line, from the breakers all the way south to the I-40. So this HOV line can run the BRTs. So it not only a project, but also it's a BRT. So that's a way to address the congestion issues. Yeah, that's a way. So there's issues on the congestion issues from eastern end connectors all the way south to the I-40 to address it. So one way is not saying we will have it in the MTP, but we want to test it. One way is we get HOV lines. So HOV lines not only meet the goals, we will promote transit of BRT, fast running BRT. And also we can encourage the HOV high occupancy car driving, not just single car driving. So two objectives we need is MTP as a test project. For US 70, based on the congestion management recommendation and phase 1 studies of US 70, we will have a parallelized collector roadway along US 70 to see how it looks like, whether it solves the issue of still adding transit, we need to add BRT or things. That's a test for this shared leadership scenario. Altogether scenario, this one will not have a constraint for the budget. So assume the local people, residents, and government would contribute more fund. And we may get a more fund from federal, from state, and reach the investment to the transit activity, transportation mode. That's assumption, budget assumptions. So the land use plan is based. That this is typo. This is not.
It's not right, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is not right. So it's based on the local transit plan, but we will have a density development from key locations. For example, RTP, mobility hub, and dorm, the village and the North Medical Center, we will have high density development based on this. And if there are railway stations, intercity station, maybe there are density development as well. So for the transit, we will not only have the intercity rail, but also regional rail. This is get regional rail back from previous MTP scenario. Definitely it's high investment. It says this is not constrained for these scenarios. And also we will have 4 BRT lines all from MTP, from previous MTP get into this scenario with possible extension. For example, we may extend it, the north-south BRT from Champ Hill to the north, to the Hillsborough, to Melbourne, the south to Pittsburgh. And for the dorm one, we may extend to other locations as well for the south one. And we will add US 70 BRT lines from Raleigh downtown along the US 70, very quick, and all the way to the village. That's a test plan. And the dorm has another small ongoing small stars FTA studies for BRT right now. We may take that one in. For bus line, it's just adjustment because we have more BRT lines. Some bus line need to be more. We may need some feeder bus to BRT added in. That's transit part. Highway part, we still remain the freeway HOV lines and US 70, same as a shared leadership scenario. That's the last scenario, altogether scenario. High density of land use, more transit, and activity transportation. These are summary tables of all these scenarios, deficiency, plan and trends, shared leadership altogether. The first rule is investment. So $1 means less investment because we stop investment after 2028. The second one get $2. It's not means double. It's not in scale. It just means more than first scenario, more investment than first. And share leadership, a little more investment than the plans and train is $3. It's not exactly the dollar, number of dollars. So for highway investment, existing past committed deficiency one is the less investment, and train scenario is high investment. For the bus investment, altogether is highest. Let's see, as we said, that's not constraint. For the BRT, same as bus, the altogether is high investment. Rail is altogether as well, because we have both intercity rail and a regional. I can pad together will get more investment. Develop density is the last one altogether, get highest density. It's a summary of I already presented this table to the joint board meeting with minor changes. That's all the presentation. And it's just for your information. If you have comment and suggestion, yeah, more than welcome. Take it to see whether some changes of this.
I'm going to have to run soon, and I'm going to leave it in very capable hands of these two. But Yan Ping, I did want to just say it would be good to see what our outcome could look like if in the shared leadership plan we put less funding on highway and redistributed that down into bus, BRT, rail, and I'd like, as we have that conversation, or as that conversation is even had without me, like what is our ability to flex within each model? So if we, plans and trends, shared leadership, are all together, right? So
I try to get it. You want to lower the highway investment for shared leadership scenario.
I think that would be a compelling option to me, because I recognize that we're going to have to make some investment in highway. But if we value these other modes of transportation more highly, like if we took some funding from that and focused it.
So to which level you would like to the existing past committed, or to the previous MTP, or
why don't we look at the CMP and partially implement with the lower tier improvements as a start, and then we can see, so we can sort of test it a little bit there, because that's just checking and unchecking certain boxes, right?
Very much agree with that. I think that the importance of the scenarios is to be able to separately evaluate all of the possible conditions, and the benefit of doing one like Karen was talking about was that you can show how much highway money can go into much more like PED. It's much more value in terms of miles provided of transportation per dollar. So I would second that.
I think the other thing is, we've heard in previous things seen that in many cases, the most impactful thing you can do in terms of solving problems really relates to land use rather than investments in highways or buses or whatever. And so I'd like to see a really high density option to really understand better, because basically you've only got two density options. And if I understood you correctly, your higher density is really just in a couple of nodes, rather than sort of what would happen if, everybody abolished, single family only zoning, things like that, that would really up the density quite a bit. So I'd like to see an ability to really get a better handle on what increases in density do to outcomes.
I think we tested that in our preliminary exploration scenario we presented in the spring, correct? We had something that was above the transit corridor, what we presented at the joint meeting in January, correct?
Can I also add to that, though?
Can you clarify that? I think I missed part of that.
Is this the person?
So the exploratory scenarios,
Yes.
we had something above, we had a tier above what we're proposing to test in.
Yes, we had a scenario that looked at essentially putting all the growth in only transit served locations. So you would have had no sprawl, all the growth sort of internal.
Isn't that on the altogether, isn't that the sort of assumption of the altogether sort of?
No, so the altogether essentially just allows increased density in those locations within our land use allocation model. Now, our model is going to say those are highly desirable locations, so it's going to funnel more growth there. But essentially, the way that that model works for most of these scenarios, it'll just take your existing land use plan that says this is, you know, this type of development can happen there, and it allocates the growth. But for the altogether, we go in and we take those sort of transit accessible locations and we boost what can be built there so that it can allocate more there. That's essentially the way that works.
Back to this, I know you can't, like, what are the I keep saying this, what are the conversations back with planning departments? Because to Michael's point, even if a model says a thing, if the UDO isn't adopted to allow the thing, it doesn't really matter. And as we all know, as decision makers, we're all fighting with residents around density. Like, that is a universal reality for regardless of the community in the triangle. And so that's where the tension is.
And I think if we can show that allowing density in places, you know, not just green fields or where there's a transit station, but if we can show, if there is, you know, we have to be able to prove it. If we can show that allowing this kind of density in our communities really does have an impact on people's mobility, it gives the electeds who are fighting those fights the ammunition that they may not have had previously.
And the second point, because there's a lot of, I will say, disingenuous arguments around environmental, climate change and harms around density, which in fact, honestly, the higher the density and the more contained it is in the box, the less sprawl, which is actually, if you're really actually pro, you know, these things that folks say that they are, then that is what we should all be moving towards. But I think that's the other thing that we have to show is you know, we often hear, well, we don't want to be Atlanta, we don't want to be Charlotte, but then folks don't actually want to make the decisions to not be those things.
I think it would be helpful to have conversations, you know, again, this is iterative process, updating iterative process to better understand what information and analysis will be impactful and to arm local decision makers, because it's intuitive, right? I mean, we've been talking about this back to 2009, the Strategic Transit Commission said, hey, you know, here are strategic transit investments, but none of this matters if you don't address land use. So here we are 16 years later, and we're still saying, but it's the land use. So at some point there was a disconnect of we're not getting the right information to decision makers. And I think we've got to dial that in. You know, what is actually helpful? Because it's not just intuitive, it's not just throwing it in a report, what will actually make a change.
And I think it's really important to remember that the MTP is aspirational. And it's also really important because anything we want to do, though, it also needs to be in the MTP. Everything connects back. And if you want to then in the future push something forward, it's very important to have it documented in the MTP. So it becomes a very important tool. I think it's important for us to keep that in mind, what the purpose is.
Oh, go ahead, sorry. Carl.
Yeah, I mean, just thanks for for the presentation. I think this scenario planning is really helpful. To Doug's point, like, and to Michael's point, if we don't influence our land use planning, and this to me shows that if we really want to go together scenario, which I think is our preferred scenario, then we do have to, like, in Durham, we've got to, like, our plan goes to like 2045 or something. Our plan needs to evolve even further to get more dense. So it's sort of like transportation and land use do have to interact. So I think I appreciate the scenarios. Because my question is, so what's next? I think we saw this similar presentation at the joint Campo meeting. So like, what's next in the process, and what will we see next from you?
So after this 3 alternative analysis we have sent here, ask you to release for the public comment. Same time, we will starting to prepare based on the result from these 3 scenarios. We will prepare preferred scenario. This project list and the project list and highway list or other type, RTS or other type of the project list as a preferred scenario, and then publish it for comments. So at that time, we will present to the everyone, PC or ask the comment. That time, if you don't like that, you think it's not fit the goal of MTP, you can short it down, or you can suggest even additional project.
But we're not setting up a public comment now. This is
We're just receiving the report and providing comments.
So when does it go to for public comment?
We'll come back after we run the models and show you the results and compare them to the E+C scenario.
Amy?
I like that you have visuals on that scenario summary and comparison, but as you mentioned, it's not a one-to-one, the $1 sign versus two. It'd be nice to have that like a little asterisk and that explained to people.
I'll do that.
Possibly have some sense of scale, because some people are saying, the highway investment is, maybe a larger, log scale is larger than the other investments. And so we don't realize, are we one-to-one trade-off, or is it a 10-to-1 trade-off? So somehow, I like that this is easy to read and visual, but it seems like you need a little paragraph somewhere to help people know what the trade-offs really are.
Thank you. I think next up is, we just needed to receive the report, so there's no action on this. And then next up is board chair. She's exited. I have nothing to share. Technical committee.
Yeah, I just want to thank the TPO staff for hosting the TC and board retreats. They were very productive, at least from the TC side. And all those members that attended. Thanks.
Thank you. You done?
The only thing that I'm excited about calling out, we have worked through the procurement and consultant selection process for US 70 East. As you've seen, it is definitely a corridor that pops out in our analysis. So we are working to get that scope and agreement in place.
And that's for the, we get this for the study, or which element of
phase 2. So between 885 to 540, the US 70 corridor.
And what's being studied exactly?
So we had some preliminary alternatives that showed some parallel roads, some grade separations, that sort of thing. This will take it to the next level of actually developing some cost estimates according to the NCDOT guidelines, and probably try to scale improvements into what are actually feasible to be built along the corridor. So we'll have
the different models. So it's like this sort of parallel roadway thing.
Components of that. We'll have to cherry pick what is actually deliverable, because I think what we found at the end of phase 2 is we just had another huge mega project that is probably not realistic given our funding outcomes. So what can we do now incrementally to improve the corridor, knowing that with our current level of investment, it is going to fail capacity wise, let alone the existing functional obsolescence out there. And try to model that and work with NCDOT to create a a project that's potentially deliverable within existing funding constraints. And also understanding how that fits into our transportation planning metrics that go beyond just volume over capacity.
So it's gonna include BRT as part of the big plan.
Potentially, but I will say, and I'll call this out, we have looked at the preliminary modeling for BRT connecting the village to Briar Creek, and the numbers are not supportive. So we've got to, going back to land use, we've got to have a serious discussion. What will make that kind of investment realistic on that corridor?
So how will that get done though? Will the second phase, will they have the capacity or the expertise to incorporate land use?
That's what we're working through, and we think they do.
Okay.
We've selected Baseline Mobility Group in partnership with AECOM. So they were the group that worked on our congestion management process and incorporating that understanding into, what land use decisions need to be made out there.
Okay, because the whole point of the second model of the parallel collector streets, that's all about land use.
The good news is also we believe with our existing budget of this fiscal year, we will not need to adjust any of the funding that we have and increase our ask to the partners, the members of this organization. So we think we can accomplish those outcomes with the existing funding we have.
The only thing I forgot to say was that thank you for everyone who came to the retreat earlier this month. I know that that was additional time for board members and staff, so thank you for that. Next up, we have NCDOT reports. Lisa Mathis, I don't know if she's still on.
Yes.
Hi, Lisa, I don't know if you want to have any reports for us.
I am indeed. Thank you. I just wanted to give you guys a quick Helene update. It's now been 152 days since Helene and the NCDOT employees and our partners have worked hundreds of thousands of hours to help with the recovery. There are still about 9,400 damaged sites, including 835 bridges and 875 pipes and large culverts. Crews and contractors have completed the permanent replacement of 8 bridges, and we expect 139 more will need to be replaced. And they've completed nearly 200 of the bridge repairs and over 700 of the pipe and large culvert repairs and replacement. We are now reporting 172 road closures. 34 are on primary routes, and there are 84 with partial access and 54 that are closed to truck traffic. Anyone that's interested can follow our efforts to reopen roads on a dashboard that's been created for this. There's a link that you can find on the drivenc.gov website. We are also very proud of the work and dedication for all involved in the progress. We cannot stress enough how grateful we are to the efforts of staff, our contractors, and our many partners as we help Western North Carolina recover. In honor of Black History Month, we've highlighted some of the programs offered through our Office of HBCU Outreach. We've got several programs and initiatives to help young professionals as they transition from college into their eventual careers in transportation fields like engineering, logistics, and urban planning. We've got exciting news out of Division 8. We've got a Rockingham bypass now open in Richmond County. It's a 7.2-mile route that's designated as a US 220 future I-73-74. We're very excited for the community about that. North Carolina by train, record ridership. We recorded another year of record ridership. In 2004, we carried over 720,000 passengers, which is a 12% increase since 2019. Ridership has been boosted by the addition of a 5th round trip train frequency between Raleigh and Charlotte, as well as recent special event trains providing service to new locations. So that's just a little quick wrap up. We've obviously got a lot happening with our federal partners. So we're just keeping an eye on that, and we'll keep you posted as things settle down. Any questions?
Oh, I don't see any. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Becca.
Yeah,
Is it Gaius or Gallus?
Dallas.
Okay.
Yeah, not like Dallas. Good morning, everybody. Just one quick update. This week is our STIP drop-in session. So I know we talked about PA today a lot, but this is for the current draft STIP, which covers 2026 to 2035. So that's in our division offices up on Duke Street. So it's 8 to 5 every day this week. So if you are a constituent wants to drop by to talk about the draft STIP and look at the map with us, we'd love to sit with you and talk through it. If you do have questions about the draft STIP, would also be happy to talk with you all. I know we've had the opportunity to do that with that kind of stuff. I think it's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Division 7.
Hello, everyone. Cheddar McCoskey here. We also, in Division 7, have our draft STIP public drop-in this week until Friday from 8 to 5 here at the Division 7 office on Yanceyville Street in Greensboro. Other than that, I have also emailed everyone in this meeting and PowerPoint presentation for the I-40 project. That's the I-3306A project. So I've emailed that to all attendees. Hope you find that informative, and that's all I have for now.
Thank you. Division 8.
Good morning. Jerron is also with us from Division 8. This is Brian Kluchar, and there are 3 ways to comment on the draft STIP. The easiest is to use the ncdot.gov website, or you as an MPO can contact Brian Wirt, the STIP manager, to propose changes. Or we also have our Division 8 drop-in this week in Carthage. And unfortunately, the draft STIP moves our U6192 project on US 15501 to preliminary engineering only. And that means the right-of-way and the let dates have been removed from the 10-year plan, and the project would be rescored in P8 just like a new submittal. Be glad to take any questions. Thank you.
I actually have a question about that, Brian, if you could help me out. Will the department move ahead with preliminary engineering of that facility to dial in the design, or is that designation effectively shelving any activity on the project?
It is to be determined by individual project, so there is no plan at this time.
Is it determined at the division office level, or?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. Transportation Planning Division.
Julie has another meeting, but no report. If there are any questions for NCDOT TPD, send her an email.
Traffic Operations. John Grant. Okay. Integrated Mobility Division. Okay. And then item 14 is just a bunch of probably very useful articles. There's a long list. And I think we are adjourned. Next meeting is Tuesday, March 25th at 9 a.m.
For an hour.
It's true about